Well, I'm back with a new project. This video is going to show the inner workings of my new game, Ragdoll Destroyer. Yes, this game is kind of a physics tech demo, but it also serves the purpose of, well, I guess, anger management. I made it so you can customize the character to look like politicians or your old bully from high school. You know, if you want to throw them in a blender or something. But in all seriousness, this was a fun project I used to become more skilled in Unreal Engine's physics system. So let's get right into it. The controls for this game are as simple as clicking and dragging. You can click on the character and drag him around the level as a skeletal physics object. The left-hand side of the screen has placeable objects which you can use to deal more damage to the player. As far as the game design goes, the point of the game is to do as much damage as possible. The more damage you do to players and objects, the more items you unlock. Unlockable items include items from the left panel, or the toolbox as I call it, and items for your player like shirts and hats. On the top of the screen has a menu with a few buttons. The pause button makes the game go to slow motion mode. The room button lets you select different rooms. There's a few unique and different rooms players can fool around with. The eraser lets players erase objects in the room. And of course, the restart button cleans everything up. The customize feature lets players customize their ragdolls. There are a few controls for color, there's morphs for gender and size, and there's also a face loader that lets players load custom textures to the game. The cosmetic items are built using the Steam Inventory SDK, so you'll always be able to have your items. You can buy them with damage points, or you can buy different packs within Steam's in-app purchase system. A few of the toys include a cannon. It has different buttons to adjust the height, and then you can launch the character. There's a blender. This is fun to watch. And then there's a few things you can crush the ragdoll with. Moving on from gameplay, let's look at the inner workings of the game. Like all my games, it's built using Unreal Engine. The two main blueprints that house all the logic for this are the player controller and an actor I call the level controller. The level controller houses all the level logic, while the player controller takes care of things like the UI, damage, and controls. One thing you'll notice about this game is that the blueprints are very messy. An odd philosophy I've picked up is actually the amateur idea that code can be sloppy as long as it works. I understand this is a terrible philosophy, but I decided that this is a small game, and the only developer who will ever see the code is me. As long as I kept important optimizations and best practices in mind, the blueprints could get away with looking ugly for this. Now that I've given up my excuses, let's look at the level controller. The event tick controls cameras. The level controller has an array of cameras, and depending on some variables in the controller, those cameras will either follow mouse movement or will track to the active ragdoll. The level controller also resets the level by resetting all object classes in a level and removing all placed actors. The ragdoll controller, or player controller, is where the entirety of game logic exists. It creates the menu, moves objects when you click and drag them, and it also houses the logic for placing actors in the level. It does this by line tracing on tick, and then creating a preview actor to place, which is then replaced by the real actor on click. This action can be cancelled with right-clicking. Moving actors is done by using the physics handle component, which is cached when the player clicks on an object, and moving occurs by setting the target location of the current physics handle to the position of where the mouse is. Something neat about this game is the PNG faces, the ability to load a texture in runtime to display on the face of your ragdoll. This is done using the Load Texture from File node in my File Manager plugin, which is available on the Unreal Marketplace. User interface and experience was another interesting concept. I used Figma for the designs and imported them to Unreal UMG and implemented them with blueprints. This is my first time using Figma for game UI, and I kind of prefer it to Photoshop and Illustrator. Lastly, I had to add this. Using Niagara and effect systems, I made a gore mode which is off by default. Players who are slightly more troubled can enable it, and the ragdoll will bleed when it takes damage. This is a simple boolean that comes from the game settings and is used to add extra sounds and other Niagara effects. So that's it. I made this as a unique project, and I learned a lot of new things about Unreal Engine's physics system, animations, and effects. I had a lot of fun building it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I've left a link to the game down in the description, and I'll be running a sale this month for those interested in trying it out. Make sure to leave a like, and I'll see you in the next one.